Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Rose Writes and I write and narrate Miraculous Ladybug fan fiction. Thank you so much to ChocoLuck Chipz for allowing me to use their amazing artwork in my thumbnail. They are insanely talented, so be sure to check them out at the link below. Now then, please enjoy Chapter 25, Sleepovers. The Miraculous Team, post-Akuma fight, exhausted. A trail of superheroes swung through the open window of Marinette's apartment, collectively detransforming. Another villain, but this one was stronger than usual. Zoe threw herself in Marinette's fluffy armchair, letting out a long sigh. We don't usually get our butts kicked that badly. We won, didn't we? Alia said, leaning over Zoe to check her reflection in the vanity mirror, smoothing her hair. Barely. Luca slumped over on the couch. Luca, typically an optimist, had to use the power of second chance several times just to make sure they all made it out of the fight alive. The things he had seen in just one fight. His team couldn't remember, but he would never forget. Marinette, their vivacious team leader, stood in the center of the room, attempting to lift their spirits. Come on, guys, we've seen worse, right? Her eyes landed on each and every one of her partners, their eyes glued to the floor. Nino, your shelter never failed to protect us. That's like my only job, so... he said half-heartedly, rummaging through his bag for a snack. Marinette shook her head. Her positivity would not be defeated. Well, what about Alia? Your illusions were flawless today. And yet the villain saw through them every time. Alia sighed out as she smoothed her foundation line, still eyeing herself in the mirror, then planted herself in Zoe's lap. Hey! Zoe protested, which didn't last long as she gave up, allowing Alia to use her as a chair. Marinette looked around the room at her group of friends, who looked truly downtrodden. She grasped for one last straw. Okay, but what about Adrian? Her eyes drifted over to her feline partner. Sleep. Super. Annoyance peeked through her voice. Maybe we should follow his lead, Marinette. Luca came to Marinette, taking her shoulders. Marinette's left eye twitched as her gaze settled for a moment on each exhausted face. Did she look as exhausted as she felt? Probably. When was the last time she got a decent amount of sleep? Akuma fights had taken over her life, so she couldn't quite remember. Yeah, but... she started. You didn't see what I did, Marinette. Luca gripped her shoulders a bit tighter, speaking sternly. I have to watch the people I love get severely injured, sometimes even killed, over and over again. You have to rest, Marinette. We'll create a plan for defeating Hawkmoth, but first we need to rest. We're no good like this. He gestured around to the room of heroes dozing, some lightly snoring. Marinette bit her lip, nodding hesitantly. You're right, Luca. We should get some sleep. Marinette laid in her bed, a bit uneasy, as she stared at her friends sprawled out in every cranny of her small bedroom. She tossed and turned for a few minutes before eventually succumbing to a dreamless sleep.
Ah, my beautiful sleep demon.
Hawkmoth hissed to the dormant statue.
Paris has been dreaming pleasant dreams for far too long. Well, no more.
With a flourish, he placed a hand on the statue which shook, crumbling to the floor, releasing an ancient senti-monster, taking the form of a human woman, her skin a light purple hue. Hawkmoth cackled, his evil torrent echoing around the halls of the Louvre Museum.
Mara,
he whispered with a sinister grin.
Release your nightmares, so that the citizens of Paris may never awake from my endless cycle of terror.
With pleasure, Hawkmoth. The senti-monster levitated, flitting from the building quicker than the naked eye could perceive. Atop a high building, she levitated, scanning her glowing eyes across the sleepy city. Enjoy your eternal nightmare, the demon tittered. She closed her eyes, as if sensing where sleeping civilians were located. Medusa-like tendrils spread out from her head, slithering through the streets, siphoning the energy from the unconscious. Never should they wake from their state of nightmares, doomed, trapped forever. Their fear gave her strength. Yes, so sweet. Delectable nightmares. Mara increased in size as more people fell prey to her overwhelming power. Hours inched by, and Marinette tossed and turned a bit more, awaking to Adrian's groggy voice, speaking incoherently. Adrian? Marinette muttered, rubbing her eyes. No response. She didn't realize he talked in his sleep. Strange. Marinette got up, staggering to the couch where he laid. Adrian, she said a bit louder to no avail, but getting closer allowed her to hear his mumbled words. I couldn't save her. I can't do anything. Marinette became more alert, shaking Adrian's shoulder. Adrian is fine. You're having a nightmare. Everyone's okay. I'm fine. His face wore a distressed expression, but he didn't wake. This isn't funny. Wake up! Marinette said with more urgency. Some team members began stretching, hovering around. What's going on, girl? Do you even know what time it is? Alia muttered as she stood beside Marinette, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Guys! Marinette started as the gang slowly started to rise from their sleeping places. Adrian is having a nightmare and he won't wake up. Alia looked at her skeptically, a hand on her hip. I guess it's never too early for Alia to be sassy, Marinette thought. Dude, I've got this. Nino sauntered up to his best friend. Hey, Adrian, will you wake up for some pizza? Zoe looked around, her deer-like eyes wide. But Nino, we don't have any. Shh, I'm doing something. Adrian loves pizza. He cleared his throat. It's your favorite, pineapple and ham. Nino suddenly looked ill at the thought. And this time I won't even make fun of you. Nothing. If he isn't waking for pizza, he's not waking at all. Nino raised his hands in defeat. Luca sighed heavily, pushing past the mob surrounding Mr. Sleeping Beauty. Adrian, Luca said, patting Adrian's cheek softly. Adrian! He shook Adrian's shoulders roughly, his mouth hanging open slightly, making way for more mumbling. Ladybug. Gone! Couldn't save her! His face twisted in pain. His voice sounded strained, almost as if choking on the words. All eyes landed on Marinette fearfully. I don't know what this is about. She got on her knees to plead with her sleeping friend. Adrian, please, wake up. We need you. I need you. Marinette stroked the hair out of his face. She placed a hand on his face, lifting a heavy eyelid. Instead of seeing the whites of his eyes, it was just purple. A glowing purple. Marinette let out a yell, struggling to her feet. What is that? What's going on? She tenderly cupped his face. She couldn't understand, but whatever infected Adrian had Hawkmoth's fingerprints all over it. Hawkmoth. Luca mumbled, reading her mind. Come on, gang, we've got to go. The rest of the team quickly transformed in the wee hours of the morning, swiftly exiting the same way they had entered. Marinette hesitated, staring longingly at the sleeping Adrian. She couldn't just leave him. He needed her to protect him from whatever threat this was. Her eyes began to well up. Girl, you okay? The now Rena Rouge said, 1 foot out the window. Yeah. Marinette's voice lingered, her focus not breaking from Adrian's lifeless form. Rena quietly moved across the floor as if not to wake him. "It's going to be okay. We're going to save him. It's what we do." She shot her best friend a reassuring smile, then gave her a hug. Marinette clung to Rena for a long moment before releasing her with a long sigh. Rena was right. There's no time for a classic Marinette meltdown. Her priority was Adrian, and she'd get him back. She knew it. "Okay." She exhaled with renewed strength. "Spots on!" And away she zipped through the open window in the darkening sky in the early hours of the morning. Adrian would be okay. He had to be. When the dawn broke and Adrian finally opened his eyes, Marinette would finally tell him how she felt. She would tell him that she loves him. Rain fell by the buckets, thunder echoing in her ears. She could barely see in front of her, except everything looked purple, the same shade as Adrian's eyes. "Ladybug, look!" Luca yelled, pointing to something. Everything fell cloaked in rain and purple. But just like that, the cloud of color dissipated, and Ladybug saw him. The tall, dark figure, standing next to a woman nearly stretching past the top of the Eiffel Tower. Who is she? Whoever or whatever she was beautiful. She looked perfectly sculpted, like she belonged to top an Oscar award or a Tony, or something elegant and prestigious. Ladybug covered her eyes to shield them from the rain, then noticed the skin of this woman was also purple. The team swung and bounded to the tower, standing behind the usually elusive Hawkmoth. "It's over, Hawkmoth. You're outnumbered," Ladybug said loudly, her voice resounding around the metal structure. The cold rain cascaded down her face, blurring her vision slightly, her fringe flopping in her face. His cackle burned its way into her ears.
"You think so? I'm going to squash you like the bug you are!"
Hawkmoth spun her way, jumping to her, his staff lifted overhead. The team scattered, dodging his strike.
"Where's your house pet?"
He chuckled, continuously swinging at her. Ladybug took the brunt of his attacks, the others occasionally trying to throw Hawkmoth off. But his feet glided across the metal like a Tai Chi master, purposeful and never a step out of place. "Mirage!" Rena Rouge chanted, the team suddenly tripling in size. Punch, punch, kick, swipe, grab! Everything they could throw at Hawkmoth, he deflected. He knew the real team from the illusions. Infuriating. Only a few illusions remained. Vesperia snuck behind Hawkmoth, then yelled, "Venom!" Without turning around, he moved the slightest amount, knowing she would crash into Viperion, leaving her dazed and him paralyzed.
"Now, you have no more second chances,"
he hissed, spitting the words at Ladybug. "Who's your friend?" Ladybug strained as she threw her yo-yo tirelessly, attempting to get a grip on Hawkmoth. She didn't remember it being so difficult to best him before. The rain certainly didn't help matters.
"How very rude of me. This is Mara, bringer of nightmares. Those who have even an inkling of a bad dream, my dear Mara, can tap into their subconscious, allowing them to live that nightmare for the rest of their life."
He chortled some more, as if he had already won the battle. Ladybug's face froze, as if she had been hit by the venom, processing the villain's words. That's what Adrian meant. His nightmare must be protecting her, then something happens and he can't. Guilt settled in Ladybug's stomach. She immediately questioned everything. If she had been more cautious, he wouldn't feel it was his obligation to protect her. Every scenario of her recklessness ran through her mind, which was exactly what Hawkmoth wanted. She stared a hole through him, his conniving grin twisting up at the edges, reminding her of the Grinch. Wouldn't this make a nice book? How Hawkmoth stole the joy from Paris. Well, not now. Not today. Not ever. Shelter! Carapace threw his power on the remaining part of the team to protect them from another blow. Viperion still out of commission from the venom, Vesperia joining the team again.
I can sense a dream. Ah, yes.
He held hands with Mara almost as if the nightmares were being transferred to him.
A delicious dream. An exhausted partner, unable to save the love of his life.
Ladybug's eyes filled again with tears, knowing his sight was on Adrian's nightmare. Stop! Ladybug yelled.
Except in this nightmare, he watches his partner lay defeated and dying, unable to do anything to stop it, doomed to repeat this torture for the rest of his days.
He said, his voice as smooth as honey and as venomous as arsenic. Stop it! For the love of God, stop! She pleaded, unable to tell where the rain stopped and her tears began. She collapsed to her knees, holding herself. A cackle escaped Hawkmoth's lips, mimicked by Mara in a high, shrill timbre. Before their eyes, they saw the Senti monster grow in size as she fed on more nightmares. Panic etched itself on the faces of Ladybug's team. Ladybug took long, deep breaths to avoid hyperventilating, picking herself up. There's one thing I haven't done yet. She tried to sound confident, throwing a hand in the air. Lucky charm! A blinding pink light replaced Carapace's shelter. A small item floated to Ladybug's open palms. Upon further inspection, the spotted item was a Polaroid picture with a smiling Adrian Agreste standing, arms crossed, leaning against the brick wall of her parents' bakery. This image brought back a warm, fuzzy feeling as she stared into his emerald green eyes. She had taken this photo for an impromptu photo shoot when he agreed to model some of her designs for her Etsy shop. In a bold black font on the bottom edge of the picture read, Cat Noir. She smiled fondly, speaking softly, unaware of her surroundings. Adrian. Hawkmoth stopped in his tracks, staff raised.
What did you say?
Ladybug looked at him with confusion before speaking with great effort. Adrian. He is the reason I fight, and he is the reason I will defeat you. She flashed Hawkmoth the picture. He snatched it in his two gloved hands, staring at it for too long. His eyes, devoid of all emotion, stared intensely at the blonde boy, scanning every centimeter of the picture.
Adrian,
he growled.
Cat Noir. No, it can't be. How did I let this happen? My son. I swore to protect him.
For the first time ever, Ladybug saw true fear shoot across Hawkmoth's face. No. Then that means you're... Ladybug's voice trembled as she held out a shaky finger. Gabriel Agreste. Luca finished, as he stumbled to his feet, the effects of venom wearing off. Ladybug's face flooded with emotion from fear, panic, settling on anger. How dare you! Her voice cut through the rumbling thunder. Her yo-yo ripped through the air, catching Hawkmoth off guard, stealing his staff. Adrian can't wake up, doomed with these nightmares because of you! And for what? The yo-yo threw his staff to the opposite side of the tower. Hawkmoth made no move to retrieve it. The spotted superheroine whipped the magical yo-yo back in his direction, wrapping it several times around him, bringing Hawkmoth to his knees. Were those tears? Or was it still just the rain? It made no difference to her. Ladybug approached slowly, her team trailing behind. her brow furrowed, a scowl covering her typically cute features. She looked intimidating, and Gabriel Agreste would rue the day he crossed her. Make this nightmare end. Do it! I know you can! Ladybug yelled a bit too close to the villain's face.
Why would I do that?
He said, his voice low, not making eye contact. Because your son is laying unconscious being tortured. He probably feels lost and confused, in pain. His expression lay dormant, causing Ladybug to squeal even louder. You heartless monster! He idolizes you, you know? Hawkmoth's eyes glanced up to meet her steely gaze. I never understood it, but he loves you. Do one good thing in your rotten existence and end this! He grumbled something Ladybug couldn't hear over the ambient background noise, and her heart pumping blood throughout her body, her only hope of standing upright.
Mara!
He shouted at the senti-monster. She looked over her shoulder, her snake-like hair flailing around. The large presence stared down at him, saying nothing.
I release you from existence.
He snapped with a free hand that wasn't tied up. Nothing happened. The senti-monster still existed, her reign of terror continuing. Oh, poor Hawkmoth. No, I'm afraid you can't do that. Her voice said with amusement. Her eyes seemed to peer into Ladybug's soul, glowing the same shade as her beloved Adrian's. It felt like a knife twisted in her chest.
What do you mean?
He raged. I am my own master, Hawkmoth. You have no access to my amuck, you see. I am Mara, bringing endless nightmares to this frail city. Her ethereal voice chimed. She left them to continue sucking the life from unsuspecting targets. Hawkmoth, you can still fix this, Ladybug said, uncharacteristically cheerful for the situation. Rena Rouge pulled on her shoulder to whisper. What are you doing? You can't trust him. Everyone nodded in agreement. I know that. But do you trust me? She asked earnestly, met with hesitant nods from her teammates, including words of affirmation. She turned to face Hawkmoth, keeping up her poker face. Your powers were never intended to create Akumas. The previous Butterfly Miraculous holders created superheroes, not supervillains, with something called Tenshi, basically the opposite of Akumas.
I know all about what I'm capable of, little girl.
He growled. Ladybug stifled a grumble of her own. She had been undermined several times by cranky old men and their sexist ways. But somehow being called little girl felt even worse than when men called her sweetie or baby. She shuddered at the words. I'll release you. But I need you to tenshitize your senti-monster. End the nightmares. Ladybug bent down, her inescapable gaze on Hawkmoth. Save your son. Hawkmoth grimaced, and for the first time since this encounter, Ladybug softened her eyebrows. Regardless of all the bad things he had done, Hawkmoth was a person, even though he never acted like one. All people are capable of great good and great evil. Everyone is dealt cards, right? What matters is how you choose to play them. As if continuing her thoughts, she spoke. It's time to choose good, Hawkmoth. As if approving her message, the heroine's friends stood on the plane with her. Viperion took her shaking hand comfortingly, massaging it in his. He gave her a nod as if to say, I support you. Her other hand held steady on the yo-yo as the string secured Hawkmoth. Her courage renewed as they all stared at him. Hawkmoth's face twisted in contemplation as if thinking of the moral dilemma. But ultimately, the choice was clear. If he refused, who knew what would become of Adrian?
Okay,
He nodded, defeated by his own treacherous plot. Ladybug slowly released the string, Hawkmoth slowly raising a hand outstretched, calling back his staff Ladybug had thrown to who knows where. He closed his eyes, the team involuntarily taking a defensive stance. The sky began turning a brilliant blue as Hawkmoth and everything in the immediate vicinity glowed. This reminded Ladybug of the big fight between Avatar Aang and Ozai when good overpowered the evil. Could that be what's happening? Hawkmoth gave a pained yowl as he fell back to his knees. What's going on? What's happening? The team shielded their eyes from the bright light. The rain seemed to slow to a drizzle as this blue light took him over in a moment of syzygy, the sun threatening to peek over the horizon. What? Zoe exclaimed as the light continued to shine, anticlimactically coming to a close.
I feel this new power.
Hawkmoth croaked, taking in his new form. When the group of superheroes looked back at him, they saw not really Hawkmoth, but a superhero? Dressed in a mix of sky blue and purple, clad in a cape similar to butterfly wings. Welcome to the side of good, my man. Carapace reached out to give the new superhero a fist bump, met with a scowl. Honestly, seeing him like this felt strange. She was standing close, yet he wasn't reaching for a Miraculous. He just stood there, staring at his new garb. She couldn't help but laugh. He glared at her, Ladybug giving a small squeak.
I am not, nor will I ever be, your man.
The reformed Hawkmoth growled through gritted teeth, almost looking dangerous. But nothing with such pretty wings could possibly cause harm. Except he had been terrorizing the entire city for years, causing harm. Thankfully, no one had died. Yet. Or had they? If they did, would the miraculous ladybugs fix everything? Her eyes stared at the figure who caused so much heartache and suffering. Well? Alia asked, not fully believing this new transformation, even though she had seen it before her eyes. Do your thing, Flappy.
Watch your mouth.
He bit back. He held the staff close to his chest as if ruminating on it.
Yes. Mara, I am Papillon.
He said, either oblivious to or ignoring the stifled chuckles from the young adults surrounding him.
I will grant you the power to awaken Paris from their nightmares with sweet, sweet dreams, the kind they could only pray to have.
A bluish silver butterfly exited the top of his staff, flapping its wings, leaving behind a trail of glitter. Pretty. As the tenshi took over Mara, the subtle purple halo surrounding her faded to blue.
Dreammaker, I am Papillon.
Hello, Papillon. Her angelic voice chirped as she peered down at her audience.
Help me create sweet dreams, enticing dreams for the Parisians, waking them from their deep slumber.
He spoke softly like a lullaby, his voice soothing like a song. Mara, now Dreammaker, looked down at him with kind eyes, contrasting to the wild gaze she sported just moments earlier. Of course, that sounds nice. To sleep, perchance to dream. With ease, the sentimonster quoted Shakespeare's Hamlet, being impressed aside. Would this really work? Would Adrian really awake? Her Adrian? Her friend Adrian? Did the villain-turned-hero have any ulterior motives that could complicate this? Of course he wanted his son's safety, just like we all did. So, what did this mean? Was this Mr. Rogers-type hero on their side now? Or did this serve his ultimate goal of gaining their Miraculous? Dreammaker slowly turned her eyes, fixed on the glowing horizon, her breathtaking features catching the light just so. He appeared nearly human. Farewell, nightmares. Greetings, sweet, sweet dreams. She spread her arms out, embracing the dawn. The tendril sprawled out from her head, reaching in every direction to replace the horrifying dreams with something kinder and more wholesome. They stretched the streets, bringing promises of happiness. As the team watched in awe, Ladybug couldn't help but wonder what Adrian dreamt of. Would it be her? Or maybe of the pizza Nino said he loved so much? What did boys dream about anyway? Dreammaker retracted her tendrils, shrinking in size, floating at about Ladybug's height. She turned, a huge smile on her face, exaggerating her blinding pearly whites. It is done, Papillon. How else may I be of service to you? Papillon patted her on the shoulder, saying,
Well done. Thank you, Dreammaker, for righting my wrongs and my carelessness. I am indebted to you.
He bowed to her. It was strange seeing the soft side of the man who had caused an extensive amount of grief.
I release you of your duties, and now it is time for you to have sweet dreams. Mara.
He snapped his fingers, Mara shedding her periwinkle costume for an identical lavender one. She returned his bow, flitting through the air carefree. Adrian should wake up at any moment. The thought made her previously worried heart feel light. Papillon's peaceful facial expressions were replaced, hard lines settling like cement in his skin as his grimace returned. Thank you. Ladybug found the courage to speak after a long pause. She held steady, hoping he couldn't smell fear like most predators. You didn't have to help us, and I
didn't do it for you.
He bit back.
I did it for Adrian.
Well, whatever the reason, I am grateful, she said, pulling her yo-yo after noticing the rest of the team had already retreated. The butterfly suits you. There's always room for more heroes on the team. He scoffed at her, but nothing could dampen her mood. Not even Hawkmoth / Papillon / Mr. Agrest. Ladybug swung herself into her apartment, landing with both feet simultaneously. Spots off, she said, not stopping her swift movement. She made her way to Adrian, settling on her knees, a sinking feeling weighing on her. She tossed her eyes around the room, each team member avoiding eye contact, some looking close to tears. What's wrong? Marinette said, a panic rising in her voice. No one answered her. Why isn't he waking up? Her heart pounded, feeling the throbbing in her throat as tears overflowed her eyes. Adrian was supposed to be awake. Everyone should be fine. This can't happen. She couldn't live a life without Adrian. Marinette placed her head on his chest, slowly falling and rising from his shallow breaths. Adrian, please wake up. A tremor ran through her voice. The room felt silent and empty, regardless of everyone spread throughout the small room. She was alone. All alone. Marinette jumped as she felt a hand on her head, stroking her hair, the touch as light as a feather. She nearly thought she had imagined it. Hey, little bug, a voice rasped. Her eyes widened, glistening from the tears as they shot up to meet Adrian's groggy face. His eyes were only half open as his long slumber wore off. He's awake. He's awake! And he's okay. Well, she thought so anyway. Adrian, she said, her voice no louder than a whisper. Adrian! She threw herself at him, clinging to him. She never wanted to let him go. He embraced her back. Did I miss anything good? Adrian said, his voice sounding strained as Marinette's grip on him tightened. Marinette wouldn't tell him about Papillon or his father being Hawkmoth. At least, not now. Even though Adrian had been asleep for what felt like forever, he needed some dreamless sleep to actually get some rest. No, not really, Marinette said with a tight smile. I'm just glad you're back. I am too, even though I just woke up from the most wonderful dream, he replied smoothly. Marinette helped him to a sitting position, her heart still drumming against her chest. Yeah? She stammered. Yeah, I was about to kiss the most beautiful girl. He took her hand, squeezing lightly. And just like that, she felt like a teenager again, complete with her stomach doing flips and butterflies zooming around her insides. Really? That sounds nice. Who, he chuckled, looking into her eyes. Oh, me? You. You're my dream, Marinette. His voice teetered on the edge between solemn and flirty somehow. Marinette felt heat rush to her face, reaching her ears. That's a line from Tangled. She giggled, willing her blush under control. But alas, her face was more red than her alter ego's costume. Still true. Adrian reached out a hand, cupping her face. Her face ran hot, tears dried on her cheeks. He brushed away the tears, whispering, I love you, Marinette. She peered around the room to see if their friends were eavesdropping, and they all appeared to be sleeping. Which 100% meant they were listening. Alia couldn't resist, and the others were just as nosy. I love you too, Adrian. He pulled her in closer, hands placed on the small of her back. Their foreheads touched in this sweet, intimate moment they shared. He placed a kiss on her lips, lingering, his hands drifting up to explore her dark tresses that hung loosely by her face. Hey, Adrian, Marinette said after placing a kiss on his forehead. She stared at him, wondering how someone could sleep for so long, then wake up looking perfect, without bedhead. Adrian Agreste was perfection embodied in a human being. Yeah, he hummed. You're my dream too. He embraced her again, rubbing her back, the tension releasing. Every doubt or worry she had felt dissipated, her love for Adrian growing. Every mission together, every downfall, every success, every defeat, every single word spoken between them had led to this great love. She loved Adrian with everything in her soul. She nuzzled her face into his chest as they sunk into the couch, drifting off to sleep. They had earned these sweet dreams that were sure to befall them. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to give this video a big like and subscribe for more things like this. Big shout out to Cameron, who voiced Hawk Moth in this chapter. His channel will be linked below, so go show him some love. As always, stay miraculous.
I am not, nor will I ever be, your man. Yes, Mara. I am Papillon. Okay, that was too much. I'm sorry. I'll stop.